comments. The gentleman's time's expired, and the Chair now recognizes Mr. Swalwell from California.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. The Boston tragedy reminds us that the threat continues to be real as far as what we face with respect to terrorism, whether it's domestic or international terrorism. And I have to say that in light of what we have seen, whether it's the blogosphere, the Twitter sphere, and all the rumors that are out there, I think that the administration and you particularly have done a very fine job and have had a very measured response and have not chased many of the rumors that are out there. And having been a former prosecutor myself, coming from a family of law enforcement, I agree it's very important right now in these early stages of investigation to just simply let law enforcement do its job. There's so much to learn right now, and I appreciate that DHS is focused on that. I have a couple questions. Based on my experience as a prosecutor, when I was a prosecutor, I worked in our office, still works at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, which created what's called Urban Shield. And Urban Shield is a full-scale training exercise developed in Alameda County to test and evaluate the region's ability to respond to any kind of man-made or natural disaster. It involves first responders, businesses, law enforcement, communication systems, intelligence, critical infrastructure, and so on. And our former Sheriff, Charlie Plummer, and current Sheriff, Greg Ahern, continue to work on this, and it's now an international and national program. And we know from that program, and we know from attacks in our country and across the world, that we are only as good as our game on the ground, meaning that local law enforcement will be the first responders. And so as we are looking at our budget, what is DHS doing to publicize the training effort or encouraging other major metropolitan areas to develop programs like this or assist them with funding?
Well, we think the Urban Shield type program, that's exactly what Boston used last November. That was an Urban Shield program. That's the kind of thing we want to support through our grant guidance. It improves, as you say, just our ability to respond and to do it with as minimum of chaos as possible in the wake of a terrible event like a Boston. So yes, we work with the major city chiefs, with the Sheriff's Association, with the IACP and others, really to encourage participation and design of things like Urban Shield.
Great. Also, I believe these TACs also magnify our transit risks. And in an article this week in Politico, both Chairman McCall and Ranking Member Thompson agreed on the threat to mass transit. And I have circulated a letter asking for robust funding for the Transit Security Grant Program, which is administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency in fiscal year 2014. In that letter, I explain what I believe to be our transit risks. In the Bay Area, we have Bay Area Rapid Transit, also known as BART. And what can you tell me that the Department of Homeland Security is doing now to step up protection around mass transit? And does Congress need to do a better long-term job as far as our budgeting to secure our transit areas, and how would sequester affect this?
Well, sequester has not been helpful in a number of respects, but with respect to Boston, we have increased our security around transit hubs, working with Boston City Police and the state of Massachusetts. We have Viper teams that have been deployed into that general area and up through the New England corridor. We also put the Coast Guard on the ferries. That's also a mass transit in some areas, and it is in San Francisco Bay. So all of those things have been increased for the time being.
Great. My final question has to do with immigration, and the number of removals, you're correct, have increased under this administration, and I believe our borders have never been more secure. However, as we move toward comprehensive immigration reform, and in my district, we have a very diverse area, and as a prosecutor, I know that when you're looking at criminal removals, there's a broad range of types of criminal. As you mentioned, the convicted felon is much different than the person who is arrested for driving with a suspended license. However, you could classify both of them as a criminal. Is is the department taking steps to prioritize the removal so that we're removing the most violent and serious offenders and the lower class offenders who pose a lesser risk, and many times their crimes are associated with being here in an undocumented fashion, are not being removed at the same rate?
Yes. And one of the adjustments we made to secure communities in response to comments in that regard was to remove the automatic issue of a notice of detainer for low-level misdemeanants and others who pose no public safety threat.
Great, and thank you, Madam Secretary. And again, I'm confident that with your leadership and the way the administration has been responding to this tragedy in Boston, that we will find the persons responsible, and we all need to just be patient and trust that law enforcement will do its job.
Indeed. Thank you.